the shriek that tore through Patterson's General Store in Carlin, Nevada, on a sweltering August afternoon in 1883, made every person within earshot freeze in their tracks. Abigail Whitmore stood beside the bolts of calico fabric, her basket of flour and sugar crashing to the floor as she doubled over, clutching her swollen belly with both hands while water pooled at her feet beneath her blue cotton dress. Vincent Oakes had been examining a new saddle near the back of the store when he heard that sound. A sound no man wanted to hear, unless he was prepared with a midwife and clean linens nearby. He dropped the leather goods and turned toward the commotion, his weathered face going pale beneath his dark beard as he saw the young woman gasping for breath, her chestnut hair coming loose from its pins as another contraction gripped her body. "Someone get Doc Morrison," old Mr. Patterson called out, but Vincent was already moving, his long legs carrying him swiftly across the wooden floorboards. He reached Abigail just as her knees buckled, catching her beneath the arms with steady hands. "Easy now, easy," he said, his voice low and calm despite the panic he felt rising in his chest. "I have got you." Abigail's green eyes were wide with terror as she looked up at him. "The baby. It is too early. My husband, he went to Sacramento 3 days ago. He does not even know." Vincent felt his jaw tighten at the mention of her husband, but this was no time for the complicated feelings he had been harboring for months. "How far along are you?" 8 months, maybe more. I cannot be certain." Another contraction hit her and she cried out, her fingers digging into his forearms through his shirt sleeves. The other customers in the store stood frozen, mouths agape, and Vincent realized with a sinking feeling that no one was moving to help. Mrs. Hendricks, the banker's wife, had her hand over her mouth in shock. Young Tommy Fletcher just stared with wide eyes. Even Mr. Patterson seemed rooted to the spot behind his counter. Vincent made a decision in that instant. He swept Abigail into his arms, ignoring her gasp of surprise, and carried her toward the counter. With one booted foot, he shoved aside a display of tinned goods, sending them clattering to the floor. "Clear this counter now," he commanded, his voice brooking no argument. Mr. Patterson scrambled to push aside his ledgers and inkwells, while Vincent gently laid Abigail down on the polished wood surface. She was breathing hard, her face flushed and damp with perspiration. "Someone went for the doctor," Vincent said, positioning himself at her side. "But I need clean cloths, hot water if you can manage it, and whiskey." "Whiskey," Mr. Patterson sputtered. "For cleaning, you fool. Move." Vincent turned his attention back to Abigail, whose eyes were squeezed shut as another wave of pain racked her body. He had helped birth foals and calves on his ranch, had even assisted when his sister delivered her first child 5 years back in Missouri before he came west. But this was different. This was Abigail Whitmore, the woman who had occupied his thoughts far more than was proper for a married woman. He had first seen her 6 months ago when she arrived in Carlin with her husband, Thomas Whitmore, a silver speculator who spent more time chasing claims than tending to his young wife. Vincent had been in the general store buying supplies when she walked in, her belly just beginning to show, her smile bright despite the dust of travel still clinging to her dress. She had asked him about the best place to buy fresh eggs, and he had tipped his hat and directed her to Mrs. Chen's farm. Such a simple interaction, but something about her gentle manner and the sadness behind her eyes had stayed with him. Over the following weeks, he found himself making excuses to come into town more often. Each time he saw her, usually alone while her husband was off on another prospecting venture, he learned a little more. She was 19 years old, married at 18 to a man 15 years her senior, far from her family in Ohio. She loved to read but had few books. She missed her mother terribly. She was afraid of being alone when the baby came. And now here she was, her worst fear realized, and Vincent was the only person standing between her and complete panic. "Look at me," he said firmly, waiting until her eyes opened and found his. "You are going to be fine. The baby is going to be fine, but I need you to trust me." "I do not even know you," she gasped, but her hand reached out and gripped his anyway. "Vincent Oakes. I own the ranch about 5 miles east of town. And right now, I am the best chance you have got, so you are going to have to trust me whether you know me or not." Despite everything, a tiny laugh escaped her lips before another contraction cut it short. "That is not very reassuring." "No, but it is honest." He accepted a pile of cloths from Mr. Patterson and a basin of water that the man had somehow procured from the back room. "How far apart are the contractions?" "I do not know. Close. Very close." Her voice rose in panic. "It is happening too fast. This is not how it is supposed to be." Vincent had no idea how it was supposed to be, but he knew panic when he saw it. "Tell me about Ohio," he said suddenly, dipping a cloth in the water and pressing it to her forehead. "Tell me about your home." "What? Why?" She stared at him as if he had lost his mind. "Because you need to think about something other than the pain, so talk to me. What did you do back in Ohio?" Abigail drew in a shuddering breath. "My father owned a dry goods store, bigger than this one. I helped him keep the books. I was good with numbers." "I believe that. What else?" "I had a garden, roses and lilacs. The lilacs smelled so sweet in the spring." Her voice caught. "I miss them." "We can plant lilacs in Nevada," Vincent said, his hand finding hers and squeezing gently. "They grow here too if you care for them right." She squeezed back, hard, as another contraction built. He could see the pain etched in every line of her face, and he felt helpless in a way he had never experienced before. He had faced down rustlers and survived a winter storm that killed half his herd, but watching this woman suffer was worse than any of that. "Where is that damn doctor?" he muttered. "Doc Morrison is out at the Silver Creek mine, Mrs." Hendricks finally spoke up from where she stood at a safe distance. "There was an accident yesterday. He might not be back until tomorrow." Vincent bit back a curse. Tomorrow might as well be next year. "Then I guess it is just you and me," he said to Abigail, trying to sound more confident than he felt. "I am scared," she whispered. "I know. But fear is not going to help this baby get here safe. So you are going to be brave and I am going to help you, and together we are going to manage this." "Understood," she nodded, tears slipping down her temples. "Why are you doing this? You do not owe me anything." Vincent could have told her the truth, that he had been half in love with her since the moment he first saw her, that watching her walk through town with her hand on her growing belly had made him ache with longing for something he could never have. But instead he said, "Because it is the right thing to do, because no woman should go through this alone, and because I am not the kind of man who walks away when someone needs help." Another contraction hit, stronger than before, and Abigail cried out, her back arching off the counter. Vincent positioned himself better, wishing he had paid more attention when his sister's midwife had delivered her baby. He remembered some things, though, enough to know that babies came when they were ready, whether anyone was prepared or not. "Mr. Patterson, I need you to keep that water coming and make sure those cloths are clean. Mrs. Hendricks, if you are going to stand there, make yourself useful and fan Mrs. Whitmore. It is hotter than blazes in here." The older woman looked affronted, but did as she was told, using a folded newspaper to create a breeze. Vincent rolled up his sleeves, his mind racing through everything he knew about birthing. The baby would come when it was ready. His job was to catch it and make sure both mother and child survived. Time seemed to stretch and compress strangely. Minutes felt like hours as Abigail labored, her cries growing more desperate. Vincent talked her through each contraction, his voice steady even as his heart hammered in his chest. He told her about his ranch, about the horses he raised, about the mountains that turned purple at sunset. He told her about his plans to expand the house he had built with his own hands, about the creek that ran through his property where wildflowers grew thick in the spring. "Why are you not married?" she asked during a brief respite, her voice exhausted. The question caught him off guard. "Never found the right woman, I suppose." "That is not true," her eyes still clear despite the pain fixed on his face. "I have seen how the women in town look at you. Mrs. Patterson's daughter practically swoons when you walk by." Vincent felt his face heat. "Rebecca Patterson is 17 years old, 18 as of last month. Still, you avoid her, you avoid all of them." She gasped as another contraction began to build. "Why?" He could not answer that, could not tell her that the reason he avoided every available woman in Carlin was because none of them were her. Instead, he squeezed her hand and said, "We need to focus on getting this baby here." The contractions came faster and harder. Abigail was sobbing now, exhausted and terrified, and Vincent felt his own fear threatening to overwhelm him. What if something went wrong? What if he could not do this? But then he looked at her face, saw the trust there despite the pain, and he knew he could not fail her. "The baby is coming," she gasped. "I can feel it. Oh God, Vincent, I can feel it." "Then we are ready," he said, moving to the end of the counter with a clean cloth in his hands. "When the next contraction comes, you push with everything you have. Do you hear me?" She nodded, her face contorted with effort. The next few minutes were a blur of urgent instructions and encouragement. Vincent had never prayed so hard in his life as he did in those moments, pleading with any deity that might be listening to let this woman and her child survive. And then, impossibly, miraculously, there was a baby. Small and slippery and screaming with indignation at being thrust into the world but alive. Vincent caught the tiny body in his hands, his own hands that had handled reins and ropes and guns now cradling the most fragile thing he had ever held. "It is a boy," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "Abigail, you have a son." She was crying and laughing at the same time, reaching for her child with trembling hands. Vincent quickly cleaned the baby as best he could, remembering to tie off the cord with string that Mr. Patterson provided. Then he wrapped the infant in clean cloth and placed him in his mother's arms. The look on Abigail's face in that moment was something Vincent knew he would remember for the rest of his life. Pure love, pure joy, despite everything she had just endured. The baby, red-faced and furious, settled against her breast and quieted, his tiny fist curling against her chest. "He is perfect," she whispered. "He is absolutely perfect." Vincent found himself blinking back tears of his own. "He is strong like his mother." The aftermath was less dramatic, but no less important. Vincent helped make Abigail as comfortable as possible on the counter while they waited for the afterbirth. Mrs. Hendricks had finally overcome her shock enough to be helpful, finding a clean dress from the store's stock and helping prepare a private space behind a screen where Abigail could be properly tended to. By the time Doc Morrison finally arrived 2 hours later, dusty and exhausted from his ride back from the mine, mother and baby were both stable. The doctor examined them both with practiced efficiency, his weathered face breaking into a smile. "Well, I will be damned," he said, looking at Vincent with new respect. "You did good work here, Oakes, real good work. This boy is healthy as a horse and Mrs. Whitmore is going to be just fine." Vincent felt the tension he had been carrying finally ease from his shoulders. Thank God. You can thank God, but you should also thank yourself. Not many men could have kept their heads in a situation like this. Doc Morrison cleaned his hands and packed up his bag. "She needs rest and proper care. Is there someone who can look after her?" The question hung in the air. Abigail's husband was in Sacramento, unreachable. She had no family in Carlin, no close friends that Vincent knew of. The Whitmores rented a small house on the edge of town, but she could not stay there alone with a newborn, not in her condition. "She can come to my ranch," Vincent said before he could think better of it. "I have a spare room. My housekeeper, Mrs. Chen, can help care for her." Doc Morrison raised an eyebrow. "That is generous of you." "It is the practical solution," Vincent said firmly, though his heart was pounding. "She needs care, and I can provide it. Unless you have a better suggestion." "Mrs. Whitmore might have her own thoughts on the matter," the doctor said mildly, gesturing toward where Abigail lay resting behind the screen. Vincent approached slowly, suddenly aware of how improper this all was. He had just helped deliver her baby, had seen and done things that should have been reserved for her husband or a midwife, and now he was proposing that she come stay at his ranch. The gossips would have a field day. But when he looked at Abigail, saw her pale face and the way she held her son protectively, he found he did not care what people thought. "You heard?" he asked. She nodded. "I cannot impose on you like that. You have already done so much." "You are not imposing. You need help, and I am offering it. My housekeeper is a good woman, very proper. You will have your own room, complete privacy, and when your husband returns from Sacramento, he can collect you." Something flickered across her face at the mention of her husband, something that looked almost like disappointment, but it was gone too quickly for Vincent to be sure. "What will people say?" "Let them say what they want. Your health and your baby's health are more important than gossip." She looked down at her son, who was sleeping peacefully in her arms. "I do not know how to thank you for what you did today." "You do not need to thank me. Just let me help you a little while longer." After a long moment, she nodded. "All right, but only until Thomas returns." Vincent arranged everything with an efficiency that surprised even himself. Mr. Patterson donated a basket of supplies for the baby. Mrs. Hendricks, apparently overcome with guilt for her earlier uselessness, contributed several gowns that her own grandchildren had outgrown. By the time the sun was beginning to set, Vincent had Abigail and the baby settled in his wagon, surrounded by blankets to cushion the ride. The journey to his ranch was slow and careful. Vincent drove with extraordinary caution, avoiding every rut and bump in the road. Abigail sat beside him, the baby in her arms, and neither of them spoke much. The silence was not uncomfortable, though. It felt natural, almost peaceful after the intensity of the afternoon. The ranch house came into view just as the last light was fading from the sky. It was a modest structure, built of timber and stone, but solid and well-maintained. Vincent had spent 3 years building it himself, planning for a future that had remained stubbornly out of reach. Now, as he helped Abigail down from the wagon, he found himself seeing it through her eyes and hoping she would find it acceptable. Mrs. Chen came bustling out before they even reached the door. She was a small, energetic woman in her 50s, her silver-streaked hair pulled back in a neat bun. Her husband had worked for Vincent until his death the previous year, and Vincent had kept her on as housekeeper, both out of respect for her husband's memory and because she ran his household with remarkable efficiency. "Mr. Oakes, what is this I hear about you delivering a baby in town?" she exclaimed, then stopped short when she saw Abigail and the infant. Her expression immediately softened. "Oh, you poor dear. Come inside right now. I have already prepared the spare room." "How did you already know?" Vincent asked, bemused. "Tommy Fletcher rode out ahead to tell me. Said you were bringing a lady and her newborn baby." Mrs. Chen took Abigail's arm with gentle firmness. "Come now, you need rest and a proper meal. Mr. Oakes, you bring in whatever supplies they need." Vincent found himself dismissed to fetch and carry while Mrs. Chen took charge of the new arrivals. By the time he brought in the last basket, Abigail was already settled in the spare room, which Mrs. Chen had transformed with remarkable speed. Clean linens, a basin of warm water, a lamp burning low on the nightstand. It looked comfortable and welcoming. "She needs to eat and then sleep," Mrs. Chen informed him. The baby seems healthy, but I will watch them both tonight. You should rest too, Mr. Oakes. You look exhausted." Vincent realized he was exhausted. The adrenaline that had carried him through the afternoon was wearing off, leaving him shaky and drained. But he needed to see Abigail one more time before he could rest. She was sitting up in bed, the baby nursing beneath a modestly draped blanket. Her hair had been brushed and braided by Mrs. Chen, and she wore a clean nightgown. She looked young and vulnerable and beautiful, and Vincent had to force himself to stay in the doorway rather than crossing the room to her. "Is everything all right?" he asked. "Do you need anything?" "Everything is fine. Mrs. Chen has been wonderful." She paused, then added softly, "Thank you, Vincent, for everything. I do not think I can ever repay you for what you did today." "You do not owe me anything," he said, echoing his earlier words. "Just rest and take care of yourself and that boy." "I should probably give him a name," she said, looking down at the baby with a tender smile. "I had been waiting for Thomas to return so we could decide together, but that seems foolish now. He needs a name." "What were you thinking?" "William, after my father, William Henry Whitmore." She looked up at Vincent. "Does that sound all right?" "It sounds perfect." They stared at each other for a long moment, something unspoken passing between them. Then Vincent forced himself to step back. "Good night, Abigail. If you need anything, Mrs. Chen is right down the hall." "Good night, Vincent." He closed the door gently and made his way to his own room, but sleep was a long time coming. He lay awake in the darkness, listening to the familiar sounds of his house and trying to make sense of the day's events. A few hours ago, he had been looking at saddles. Now, there was a woman and a baby under his roof. A woman he had no right to care about as much as he did. The next few days fell into an unexpected rhythm. Abigail remained in bed, recovering her strength while Mrs. Chen fussed over her and baby William. Vincent tried to maintain his normal routine, working with the horses and mending fences, but he found himself coming back to the house more often than usual. He told himself it was just to check that everything was all right, that his guests were being properly cared for, but the truth was more complicated than that. On the third evening, he found Abigail sitting in the rocking chair by the window of her room, the baby asleep in her arms. She looked stronger now, color returning to her cheeks. She smiled when she saw him in the doorway. "Mrs. Chen said you would be scandalized if I ventured out of this room, but I was going mad just lying in bed," she said. "I hope you do not mind." "Of course not. This is your room for as long as you need it." He hesitated, then added, "How are you feeling?" "Sore and tired, but much better than I have any right to feel after giving birth on a general store counter." She laughed softly. "That is going to be quite a story to tell William when he is older." Vincent pulled up a straight-backed chair and sat down, maintaining a proper distance. "He is a lucky boy, having a mother as brave as you." "I was not brave. I was terrified. Bravery is not the absence of fear. It is doing what needs to be done despite being afraid." She studied him in the lamplight. "You were afraid too, I could tell, but you never let me see it. You just kept talking to me, keeping me calm. That took courage." "I did what anyone would have done." "No," she said firmly. "Most men would have run for the hills." "Mr. Patterson certainly looked like he wanted to, but you stayed. You helped me. You caught my son when he came into this world." Her voice grew thick with emotion. "I will never forget that, Vincent. Never." The way she said his name made something in his chest tighten. He stood abruptly, suddenly aware of how dangerous this was. "I should let you rest." "Wait." She shifted the baby carefully and looked up at him. "I have been alone in that room with nothing to do but think, and I realized that I do not know anything about you, not really. You know so much about me, about my life, my fears, but you are a mystery. There is not much to tell. I do not believe that. Everyone has a story." When he did not respond, she added, "Please, just talk to me for a little while. Tell me about yourself." He should have left. should have maintained the distance that propriety demanded. But instead, he found himself sitting back down and talking. He told her about growing up in Missouri, the youngest of 5 children. He told her about his father's farm, about learning to ride before he could properly walk. He told her about the restlessness that had driven him west at 23, seeking fortune and adventure. "Did you find it?" she asked. "Fortune and adventure." "Some. Enough to build this place, to make something of my own. The adventure got old fast, though. Turns out what I really wanted was something simpler." "What?" "A home, a place to belong, someone to share it with." Abigail looked around the room. "You have built a beautiful home, and as for someone to share it with, surely there are women in Carlin who would be interested. Maybe. But none of them felt right." "Why not?" He met her eyes directly. "Because I was waiting for something I could not have." The air between them grew heavy with meaning. Abigail's breath caught, and Vincent knew she understood what he was really saying. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then William stirred and began to fuss, breaking the tension. Abigail tended to him, and Vincent used the opportunity to make his escape. But as he lay in bed that night, he knew things had shifted between them in some fundamental way. The words had been spoken, or near enough. There was no taking them back now. Over the following days, the unspoken tension only grew. Abigail regained her strength quickly, much to Doc Morrison's approval when he came to check on her. She began spending more time out of her room, joining Vincent and Mrs. Chen for meals, sitting on the porch in the evening while the baby slept. They talked about everything and nothing, learning each other's thoughts and dreams. Vincent discovered that Abigail loved poetry and could recite Wordsworth from memory. She learned that he had a dry sense of humor that emerged when he felt comfortable. They debated philosophy and religion, politics and literature. Vincent had never met a woman who could match him thought for thought the way Abigail did, who challenged his opinions and made him reconsider long-held beliefs. And through it all, neither of them mentioned her husband. Thomas Whitmore's absence hung over everything like a storm cloud. Vincent knew he should hope for the man's swift return, should encourage Abigail to send word to Sacramento about the baby's arrival. But he found himself hoping for just one more day, one more conversation, one more glimpse of her smile. It was Mrs. Chen who finally broached the subject, pulling Vincent aside one morning while Abigail was bathing the baby. "Mr. Oakes, we need to talk about the situation here." "What situation?" She gave him a look that suggested she was not fooled by his feigned ignorance. "The situation where you are falling in love with a married woman who is living under your roof. That situation." Vincent felt his face flush. "I do not know what you are talking about. I am old, not blind. I see how you look at her, how she looks at you." Mrs. Chen's expression softened. "I understand, Mr. Oakes. She is a lovely woman and you are a good man, but this cannot continue. Nothing is happening between us." "Not yet, but it will if you are not careful, and then what? Her husband will return and there will be scandal and heartbreak." She placed a gentle hand on his arm. "You need to send word to Mr. Whitmore. He needs to know about his son." Vincent knew she was right. He had known it all along, but hearing it said aloud made it impossible to ignore. That evening, after supper, he asked Abigail about contacting her husband. Her face clouded over. "I suppose I should. I keep thinking he will simply appear one day, but Sacramento is far. He might not have any idea that the baby has come. Would you like me to send a telegram? I will be going into town tomorrow." She was quiet for a long time, staring out at the darkening landscape. "Vincent, can I ask you something? Anything? Why did you never marry? And please do not tell me again that you never found the right woman. I want the truth." He could have deflected, could have given her another non-answer. Instead, he found himself being honest. "I came close once. There was a woman in Reno about 2 years ago, school teacher, smart and pretty. Everyone said we would be perfect together." What happened? I realized I did not love her, not the way I should, not the way a man should love the woman he is going to spend his life with. He turned to face Abigail directly. I realized I was settling because I was lonely, and that was not fair to either of us. So you walked away. I did. And I decided I would rather be alone than be with someone who did not make me feel truly alive. He paused, then added quietly, until recently I had convinced myself that was the right choice. Abigail's hands were trembling. Vincent, you should not say things like that. Why? Because it is improper, because you are married. He knew he was crossing a line but found he could not stop himself. Your husband left you alone while you were pregnant. He was not here when you needed him most. Do you think that is right? It is not that simple. Thomas, he is trying to make money for us, for our future. By chasing silver dreams in Sacramento while his wife gives birth in a general store, Vincent's voice was harder than he intended. That is not taking care of you, Abigail. That is abandoning you. She stood abruptly, tears in her eyes. You do not understand. Then help me understand. Tell me why you are defending a man who clearly does not appreciate what he has. Because I am trying to convince myself that I made the right choice when I married him. The words burst out of her, and she immediately looked shocked at her own admission. I was 18 and alone after my father died. My mother had passed years before. Thomas offered security, a new life out west. I thought that was enough. I thought I could learn to love him. And did you? She wrapped her arms around herself, looking smaller than Vincent had ever seen her. I care for him, I respect him, but love, the kind of love the poets write about, no, I do not think I ever have. Vincent crossed to her slowly, giving her time to step away if she wanted. She did not move. You deserve that kind of love, Abigail. You deserve someone who would move heaven and earth to be with you. I am married, she whispered, but she did not pull away when he reached out and gently touched her face. I know, and I will send that telegram tomorrow. I will do the right thing, the honorable thing. But tonight, just for tonight, I need you to know that I see you. I see how brave you are, how smart, how caring. I see the way you love your son, the way you light up when you talk about the things that interest you. I see all of it, and it is extraordinary. A tear slipped down her cheek. This is impossible. I know that too. He stepped back, putting distance between them before he did something they would both regret. I will send the telegram tomorrow, I promise. He walked away before he could change his mind, before he could pull her into his arms and kiss her the way he desperately wanted to. But as he lay in bed that night, he could hear her crying softly through the wall, and it broke his heart. True to his word, Vincent rode into Carlin the next morning and sent a telegram to the last known address Thomas Whitmore had left. The message was brief. Your wife delivered healthy son. Both well. Come immediately. Oaks Ranch outside Carlin. He spent the rest of the day in town, avoiding his own house, and the inevitable awkwardness that would follow last night's conversation. He had a long lunch with Doc Morrison, helped Mr. Patterson inventory stock at the general store, even joined Sheriff Dalton for a drink at the saloon, though Vincent rarely drank. You are hiding, the sheriff observed, a knowing look in his eyes. I am being social. You are being stupid. Sheriff Dalton was in his 60s, grizzled and direct. The whole town is talking about you and Mrs. Whitmore. Let them talk. They are saying you are getting too close, that you have got feelings for her. Vincent set down his glass. And what if I do? What if I have feelings for a woman I can never have? Then you are in for a world of hurt, son. Because her husband is going to show up and she is going to go back to him, and you are going to be left with nothing but memories and regrets. I know that. Do you? Because from where I am sitting, you are looking like a man who is about to do something foolish in the name of love. Vincent could not argue with that assessment. He thanked the sheriff for the drink and headed home as the sun began to set. When he arrived, he found Mrs. Chen waiting for him on the porch, her expression troubled. She left, the housekeeper said without preamble. Vincent's heart dropped. What do you mean she left, Mrs. Whitmore? She packed up her things and the baby and took one of the horses, left a note. Mrs. Chen handed him a folded piece of paper. Vincent opened it with shaking hands. Abigail's neat handwriting covered the page. Dear Vincent, I cannot stay here any longer. Not after last night. What we feel for each other is wrong, no matter how right it seems. I am married, and I have a son to think about now. I need to be the kind of mother William can be proud of, and that means honoring my vows even if my heart wishes otherwise. Thank you for everything you have done for us. I will never forget your kindness, your strength, your honesty. You helped me bring my son into this world, and that binds us together in a way nothing else could. But that is where it must end. I have gone back to my house in town. When Thomas returns, I will explain everything to him. Please do not come looking for me. It will only make this harder. Yours in friendship, Abigail. Vincent read the letter 3 times, each word cutting deeper than the last. She was right, of course. This was the sensible thing, the proper thing, but knowing that did not make it hurt any less. Mr. Oakes, Mrs. Chen's voice was gentle. Are you all right? No, he said honestly, but I will be. Eventually. He went to bed that night feeling hollowed out, empty in a way he had not experienced since his father died. He told himself, this was for the best, that Abigail needed to rebuild her life with her husband, that he would move on and find someone else someday. But he did not believe it. 3 days passed with no word. Vincent threw himself into work on the ranch, pushing himself until he was too exhausted to think. Mrs. Chen watched him with worried eyes but said nothing. Then, on the 4th day, Sheriff Dalton rode up to the ranch with news. Thought you should know. Whitmore showed up in town yesterday. Vincent felt something twist in his chest. How is Abigail? That is the thing. He showed up, saw the baby, stayed about an hour and then left again. Said he had urgent business back in Sacramento, would return in a few weeks. The sheriff's weathered face was grim. Left his wife and newborn son alone again, not 3 weeks after the child was born. Vincent's hands clenched into fists. That bastard. Agreed. Mrs. Whitmore, she is trying to act like it is fine, but the whole town can see she is heartbroken. She has been holed up in that little house, barely coming out except to buy supplies. Every instinct in Vincent screamed at him to go to her, to comfort her, to tell her she deserved better. But he had promised to stay away. There is nothing I can do. Maybe not. But I thought you deserved to know. The sheriff tipped his hat and rode off, leaving Vincent staring after him. That evening, Vincent could not stand it anymore. He saddled his horse and rode into town, telling himself he just needed to see that she was all right, that was all. Just see her from a distance and make sure she was safe. He found Abigail's small, rented house easily enough. It was on the outskirts of Carlin, a modest structure with a tiny porch. A lamp burned in the window, and through the glass, he could see her sitting in a rocking chair, the baby in her arms. She looked tired and sad and alone. Vincent dismounted and stood in the shadows, watching. He should leave, should ride back to his ranch and forget about her. But his feet carried him forward almost of their own accord, and before he knew it, he was knocking on her door. Abigail opened it, her eyes widening in surprise. Vincent, what are you doing here? I heard about Thomas. I needed to make sure you were all right. She looked like she might cry. I asked you not to come. I know, I am sorry, but I cannot just pretend I do not care about you. For a long moment they stood there in the doorway, the space between them feeling both impossibly wide and dangerously narrow. Then Abigail stepped back. You should come in. We need to talk. The inside of the house was sparse but clean. A few pieces of simple furniture, a cradle that Vincent recognized as being built by old Mr. Henderson, the carpenter. Abigail gestured for him to sit while she carefully laid the sleeping William in his cradle. "He came back," she said without preamble. "Thomas. He saw his son for the first time, held him for maybe 5 minutes, and then told me he had to return to Sacramento. There is some big claim he is chasing, some promise of silver that cannot wait." She laughed bitterly. "It is always something that cannot wait, always something more important than me. Abigail, do you know what he said when I told him you had delivered the baby? He said he was grateful I had found help, patted me on the head like a child, and that was it. No apology for not being here. No acknowledgement that I nearly died giving birth alone. Just gratitude that some stranger stepped in to do what he should have done." Vincent moved to sit beside her on the worn sofa. "I am sorry. I made a mistake when I married him. I see that now. I was young and scared and alone, and he offered me security. But security is not the same as love, is it?" She turned to face him, her green eyes bright with unshed tears. "I have been thinking about what you said about the kind of love the poets write about. I never thought I would have that. I convinced myself it did not really exist, that it was just fantasy." "It exists," Vincent said quietly. "I know, because I feel it now." She reached out and took his hand. "I have been trying to talk myself out of it, trying to convince myself that what I feel for you is just gratitude or infatuation. But it is more than that, is it not?" "Yes," he admitted. "It is so much more than that. What are we going to do?" It was the question Vincent had been avoiding, the one with no good answer. "I do not know. You are married, Abigail. That means something, even if your husband does not seem to think so." "Does it, though? Is a marriage real when one person has completely abandoned their vows?" She was trembling now. "I know divorce is scandalous. I know what people will say. But Vincent, I cannot live like this. I cannot spend my whole life waiting for a man who is never really here, who does not truly want me or his son." Vincent's heart was racing. "Are you saying what I think you are saying?" "I am saying that I want a chance at real happiness. I want William to grow up with a father who is actually present. And I want," her voice dropped to a whisper, "I want to be with you if you will have me." Everything Vincent had been holding back, all the feelings he had been trying to suppress, came flooding to the surface. He cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing away the tears on her cheeks. "Abigail Whitmore, I have wanted you from the moment I first saw you. But I need you to be sure about this. Leaving your husband, starting divorce proceedings, it will not be easy. This town will talk. Some people will shun you. I know, and I am terrified, but I am more terrified of living a lie for the rest of my life." She covered his hands with hers. "I am sure, Vincent. I have never been more sure of anything." He kissed her then, finally allowing himself what he had been denying for weeks. Her lips were soft and warm, and she melted against him with a small sound of relief. It was not a passionate kiss, not yet. It was gentle and sweet and full of promise. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were shaking. "We have to do this right," Vincent said. "I will help you find a lawyer. We will start the divorce proceedings properly, and until you are free, we will be careful. No more than this." "No more than this," she agreed. "But this is enough. Knowing that there is hope for a future together, that is enough for now." Over the next several weeks, Carlin became a hotbed of gossip. Word spread quickly that Abigail Whitmore was seeking a divorce from her absent husband, and that Vincent Oakes was somehow involved. The reactions were mixed. Some people, particularly the other women who had been left alone too often by husbands chasing fortune, were sympathetic. Others, especially those who held traditional views about marriage, were scandalized. Vincent faced some of it himself. A few of his ranch hands quit, unwilling to work for a man they viewed as a home wrecker. Some of the merchants in town treated him coolly. But he also found support in unexpected places. Doc Morrison publicly stated that Vincent had saved both Abigail and William's lives, and that counted for more than gossip. Sheriff Dalton made it clear he would not tolerate anyone harassing either Vincent or Abigail. Even Mr. Patterson, who had witnessed the whole dramatic birth, defended Vincent's character to anyone who would listen. Finding a lawyer willing to take Abigail's case was harder. The first two attorneys in Carlin refused, citing moral objections to divorce. It was Doc Morrison who finally suggested a young lawyer in Elko named Samuel Benson, who had more progressive views. Vincent accompanied Abigail on the journey to Elko, maintaining proper distance and bringing Mrs. Chen as a chaperone. The lawyer listened to Abigail's story with a thoughtful expression, taking notes about Thomas Whitmore's repeated absences and neglect. Nevada actually has relatively progressive divorce laws compared to some states, Benson explained. Desertion is valid grounds and you have ample evidence of that. The process will take time though, probably 6 months to a year. And there is a possibility your husband could contest it if he decides to. Let him contest it, Abigail said firmly. I am prepared to fight for my freedom. The paperwork was filed, and then there was nothing to do but wait. Vincent helped Abigail move into a better house in town, one with more room for William as he grew. He was careful to maintain propriety, never staying late, never being alone with her without Mrs. Chen or another woman present. It was torture being so close to her yet unable to truly be with her, but both of them knew they had to wait. Thomas Whitmore, when he finally received the divorce papers in Sacramento, responded with a fury that surprised no one. He sent a blistering letter threatening to fight for custody of William, though everyone knew he had no real interest in raising a child. It was about pride and control, not love. The months crawled by. Abigail worked as a seamstress to support herself and William, refusing to accept more than minimal help from Vincent. She was determined to prove she could stand on her own, that she was not leaving one man just to become dependent on another. Vincent admired her strength even as he worried about her. She worked too hard, slept too little. William was growing into a cheerful, healthy baby, but caring for him while working was exhausting. More than once, Vincent found her asleep over her sewing, the baby drowsing in his cradle nearby. "You are going to make yourself sick," he told her one evening, gently taking the needle from her hands. "I need to finish this dress for Mrs. Henderson. She needs it for Sunday service. Mrs. Henderson can wait one more day. You need rest." He studied her face in the lamplight, noting the dark circles under her eyes. "Let me help you more, please. You are already helping. You bring us food, you fix the leak in the roof, you watch William when I have fittings." She smiled tiredly. "You are doing everything you can without compromising my reputation further." "I do not give a damn about your reputation. I care about you, I know. But I do give a damn, not for my sake but for William's. He is going to grow up in this town. I do not want him to be the bastard son of a divorced woman who people whisper about. I want to give him as normal a life as possible." Vincent knelt beside her chair. "He is going to have a wonderful life because he has you for a mother. And someday, when all this is finally settled, I hope he will let me be part of it too." She touched his face tenderly. "You are already part of it. You have been since the day he was born." News arrived 6 months into the divorce proceedings that Thomas Whitmore had been injured in a mining accident outside Sacramento. He had survived but was badly hurt, and suddenly, his priorities shifted. He sent word through his lawyer that he would not contest the divorce, and that he relinquished all claim to his son in exchange for Abigail dropping any financial demands. Abigail agreed immediately. She wanted nothing from Thomas except her freedom. The divorce was finalized 3 weeks later, on a cold February morning in 1884. When the papers were officially signed and witnessed, Abigail Whitmore became Abigail Walker again, free for the first time since she was 18 years old. Vincent was waiting for her outside the courthouse when she emerged. For a moment, they just looked at each other, hardly believing this moment had finally arrived. Then he held out his hand and she took it, and together they walked down the street in full view of anyone who cared to look. "I feel like I should be happier," Abigail said, "but mostly I just feel relieved. Is that terrible?" "Not terrible at all. You have been carrying a heavy burden. Relief is exactly what you should feel." Vincent squeezed her hand gently. "The happiness will come." He was right. Over the next few weeks, as the reality of her freedom sank in, Abigail began to relax in ways Vincent had never seen before. She laughed more easily. She played with William without the constant weight of worry pressing down on her. She allowed herself to simply be happy. Vincent courted her properly this time. He brought her flowers from the hills near his ranch. He took her on chaperone picnics, with Mrs. Chen and baby William in tow. He read poetry to her in the evenings while she sewed. It was sweet and old-fashioned, and exactly what they both needed after the intensity of the past year. 3 months after the divorce was finalized, on a perfect spring evening with wildflowers blooming across the Nevada hills, Vincent rode into town to ask Abigail a question he had been waiting far too long to ask. He found her on the porch of her house, William playing with wooden blocks at her feet. She looked up as he approached, a smile spreading across her face that made his heart skip. "This is a surprise," she said. "I was not expecting you until tomorrow. I could not wait until tomorrow." He dismounted and tied his horse to the post, then climbed the steps to the porch. William babbled happily and reached for him, and Vincent scooped the 10-month-old into his arms. "Hello there, young man. He missed you," Abigail said. "We both did." Vincent sat beside her on the porch swing, William contentedly settled on his lap. For a moment, he just enjoyed the peace of it, the sense of rightness. Then he took a deep breath and began. "Abigail, I have been thinking about the day we met. Well, the day we really met in the general store. I have thought about that day every single day since it happened, about how terrified I was, how sure I was that something would go wrong, but also about how incredible it was to witness William coming into the world to be part of that moment." She was watching him intently. "I think about it too. That day changed my life. Not just because of what happened, but because of you. Because you showed me what real courage looks like, what real strength looks like." He shifted William to one arm and reached for Abigail's hand with the other. "I spent years alone, convinced I would never find the right person. And then you walked into that store and suddenly everything made sense. Vincent, let me finish, please." He squeezed her hand. "I know we have done this backwards. I know we fell in love before you were free, that we have had to wait and be patient in ways that seemed impossible sometimes. But I would not change any of it, because every moment of waiting has just made me more certain that you are the person I want to spend my life with." He carefully set William down and got on one knee in front of Abigail, pulling a small box from his pocket. Her hands flew to her mouth, tears already starting to form in her eyes. "Abigail Walker, will you marry me? Will you let me be your husband and a father to William? Will you come live at the ranch and help me turn it into the home I have always dreamed of?" He opened the box to reveal a simple gold band with a small diamond. "I am not offering you riches or adventure, just an honest life with a man who loves you more than he ever thought possible." Abigail was crying openly now, but she was also laughing. "Yes, yes, of course yes." Vincent slipped the ring on her finger and pulled her into his arms, kissing her with all the passion and love he had been holding back for so long. William, apparently deciding this was a good game, tugged at Vincent's pant leg and demanded to be picked up too. They broke apart laughing, and Vincent scooped the baby up so all three of them were in an embrace. "We are going to be a family," Abigail whispered, her face pressed against Vincent's shoulder. "We already are," he replied. We have been since that day in the store. Now we just get to make it official." They were married on a beautiful June morning in 1884, almost exactly a year after William's dramatic entrance into the world. The ceremony was held at the small church in Carlin, with Doc Morrison standing as Vincent's witness and Mrs. Chen as Abigail's. Sheriff Dalton attended, along with a surprising number of townspeople who had come to support the unconventional couple. Abigail wore a dress she had sewn herself, pale blue with white lace trim. She looked radiant, her face glowing with happiness. William, dressed in a miniature suit that Mrs. Chen had made, sat in the front pew and clapped enthusiastically at random intervals, much to everyone's amusement. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Vincent kissed his new bride with such tenderness that several women in the congregation were seen dabbing at their eyes. Then he picked up William and kissed him too, making the boy giggle, and the church erupted in applause. The reception was held at Vincent's ranch, which had been transformed for the occasion. Tables groaned under the weight of food contributed by friends and neighbors. Lanterns were strung between the trees. A fiddle player provided music, and people danced on the grass as the sun set behind the mountains. Vincent danced with his wife beneath the stars, William asleep in Mrs. Chen's arms nearby. "Are you happy?" he asked, holding Abigail close. "Happier than I ever imagined possible," she replied. "Do you remember that day at the store when you asked me about Ohio, about my lilac garden? I remember every moment of that day. You said we could plant lilacs in Nevada, that they would grow here if we cared for them properly. And we will. We will plant them tomorrow if you want." She shook her head, smiling. "Not tomorrow. Tomorrow I just want to be with you and William. But someday, yes, we will plant lilacs and roses, and we will build a life that is even more beautiful than any garden." "We already have," Vincent said, pulling her closer. "We already have." Life at the ranch settled into a comfortable rhythm over the following months. Abigail took to ranch life with enthusiasm, learning to help with the horses and even trying her hand at riding, though she admitted she would never be as comfortable in the saddle as her husband. William grew like a weed, walking at 11 months and chattering constantly in his own baby language. Vincent expanded the house, adding 2 more bedrooms and a larger kitchen. He taught Abigail to shoot, insisting that any ranch wife needed to know how to defend herself if necessary. She taught him to cook more than just beans and bacon, and their dinners became something to look forward to. Mrs. Chen moved into a cottage that Vincent built for her at the edge of the property. She had become family to all of them, and none of them could imagine life without her. She doted on William like he was her own grandson and provided wisdom and support whenever Abigail needed it. The ranch prospered. Vincent's horses gained a reputation for quality throughout Nevada, and he began receiving orders from as far away as California. Abigail started a small business making dresses and selling them through Mr. Patterson's general store. Money was not plentiful, but it was enough, and they were building something together. One evening in late autumn, as they sat on the porch watching William play in the yard, Abigail took Vincent's hand and placed it on her belly. "Feel that?" she asked, her eyes sparkling. Vincent's eyes widened as he felt the small flutter beneath his palm. "Are you?" "I am, about 3 months along. The baby should come in April." Joy flooded through Vincent. "Abigail, that is wonderful. Are you feeling all right? Is everything okay?" she laughed. "I am fine. Better than fine. And this time," she squeezed his hand, "this time I will have my husband with me when the baby comes. No general store counters required." "I should hope not, though I have to say I am rather proud of how well we managed that. We managed it because of you. You were amazing that day." "We were both amazing. And we are going to be amazing with this new baby, too." The pregnancy progressed smoothly, unlike Abigail's first. She had proper prenatal care from Doc Morrison, rest when she needed it, and a husband who fussed over her constantly. William, now a rambunctious toddler, seemed to understand that something special was happening. He would pat Abigail's growing belly and babble about the baby in his developing vocabulary. In early April of 1885, Abigail went into labor in the middle of the night. This time, Vincent was prepared. He had Doc Morrison on standby, Mrs. Chen ready to help, and a room in the house set up specifically for the birth. Everything went smoothly, and just after dawn, their daughter was born. "She is perfect," Vincent whispered, holding the tiny girl with the same careful reverence he had shown when catching William at the general store. "She looks like you," Abigail said, exhausted but glowing. "Look at that dark hair." They named her Lily Grace Oakes, after the lilacs Abigail had loved in Ohio and the grace that had brought them together. William was fascinated by his baby sister, wanting to touch her constantly and bring her his toys. Life with two children was chaotic and wonderful. The house was never quiet, never completely clean, but it was filled with love. Vincent would come in from working with the horses to find Abigail nursing Lily while reading a story to William. Or he would wake in the night to find her already up, rocking a fussy baby, and he would take over so she could rest. They were partners in everything, sharing the work and the joy equally. When Abigail needed time for herself, Vincent would take the children on adventures around the ranch. When Vincent was overwhelmed with ranch work, Abigail would organize the hands and help prioritize tasks. They balanced each other perfectly. On their second wedding anniversary, Vincent took Abigail on a trip to San Francisco, leaving the children with Mrs. Chen. It was the first time they had been truly alone together since Lily was born. They stayed in a hotel overlooking the bay, ate in restaurants, visited museums, and simply enjoyed being a couple rather than parents for a few days. "You ever regret it?" Abigail asked one evening as they walked along the waterfront. Taking on someone else's child, dealing with all the scandal, Vincent stopped walking and turned to face her. "Abigail, William is my son in every way that matters. I was there when he was born. I was there for his first steps, his first words. I am the one he calls Papa. There is nothing to regret. I know you love him. I see it every day, but I also know it was not the life you planned. It is better than anything I planned. You are better than anything I could have planned." He pulled her close. "I got to help bring William into this world. How many fathers can say that? I held him before anyone else did. That is a bond nothing can break." Abigail kissed him softly. "I love you, Vincent Oakes. I love you too, both you and our children, all of them. All of them." She pulled back slightly, a mischievous smile playing at her lips. "How many are you planning on?" "As many as you are willing to give me. This house has plenty of room." She laughed, the sound bright and joyful in the evening air. "Well, we might be filling another room sooner than you think." Vincent's eyes widened. "Again, already, again, already." She was glowing in the lamplight. "Are you disappointed, disappointed?" "Abigail, I am thrilled, terrified but thrilled." He spun her around, making her squeal with laughter, then set her down gently. "We are going to need a bigger dining table." Their third child, a son they named Samuel Vincent Oakes, was born in January of 1886. Lily was barely 9 months old, and the house descended into organized chaos. Vincent hired additional help for the ranch so he could spend more time with his growing family. Mrs. Chen practically moved back into the main house to help manage the 3 children under 3, but somehow they made it work. Abigail proved to be an extraordinary mother, patient and loving even when exhausted. Vincent discovered he had a talent for getting babies to sleep, often ending his evenings walking the floor with a fussy infant while singing old Missouri lullabies his own mother had taught him. William, now almost 3, took his role as big brother seriously. He would help fetch diapers and try to comfort whichever baby was crying. Lily, once she was old enough, followed William everywhere, her chubby legs working hard to keep up. Samuel was a peaceful baby, content to observe the chaos around him with serious dark eyes. The years passed in a blur of birthdays and holidays, of scraped knees and childhood illnesses, of ranch work and household tasks. The silver boom that had drawn so many to Nevada began to bust, and times got harder for many families. But the Oaks family weathered it well, thanks to Vincent's decision to focus on horses rather than mining. When William was 5, Vincent began teaching him to ride. The boy took to it naturally, fearless and graceful in the saddle. Vincent felt a fierce pride watching his son, this child who had come into the world in such dramatic fashion, now growing into a confident, kind boy. "Papa, can we go up to the high meadow?" William asked one Saturday morning, already dressed in miniature riding gear. "If your mother says it is all right, but you have to promise to stay close. No running off. I promise. Can Lily come too?" Vincent looked at his daughter, who was just 3 but already showing signs of being as horse mad as her brother. "What do you think, Lily? Want to ride with Papa?" "Yes." She jumped up and down excitedly. "I want to ride Thunder. Thunder is too big for you. You will ride on Buttercup with me." The 3 of them set out, leaving Abigail at home with baby Samuel. As they rode through the hills surrounding the ranch, Vincent felt a contentment so deep it almost hurt. This life, this family, it was everything he had ever wanted and more. They stopped at the high meadow, where wildflowers grew thick in the spring. William immediately wanted to explore, and Vincent let him run while keeping a careful eye on him. Lily picked flowers, creating an enormous bouquet that would be wilted before they got home, but that Abigail would still display prominently on the kitchen table. "Papa, look," William called. He was standing at the edge of the meadow, pointing down at the valley below. "You can see our whole ranch from here." Vincent walked over and picked up Lily, then stood beside William, looking at their land spread out below. The house, the barns, the corrals, all of it built with his own hands, filled with people he loved. "It is beautiful, is it not?" he said. "It is the best ranch in all of Nevada," William declared with the certainty of a 5-year-old. "I think you might be right." That evening, after the children were in bed and Samuel was sleeping peacefully in his cradle, Vincent and Abigail sat on the porch together. It had become their ritual, these quiet moments at the end of chaotic days. She leaned against his shoulder and he wrapped his arm around her, both of them watching the stars come out. "William asked me today how we met," Abigail said softly. "I was not sure what to tell him." "What did you say?" "I told him that Papa helped bring him into the world, that you were there right from the very beginning. That is a good answer." He wanted to know more, though. Asked why his name is Whitmore when Lily and Samuel are Oaks. She was quiet for a moment. "He is going to figure out eventually that Thomas was his father by blood. Then we will tell him the truth when he is old enough to understand. We will tell him that I am not his father by blood, but I am his father in every other way. And that Thomas was not a bad man, just one who was not ready to be a husband or father. What if he resents us for not telling him sooner?" Vincent thought about that. "He might, but I would rather be honest with him than have him find out from someone else. We will sit down with him when he is a little older, maybe 7 or 8. We will explain everything, answer his questions, and make sure he knows that nothing changes how much we love him." Abigail turned to kiss him. "Have I told you recently that you are an amazing father?" "You might have mentioned it once or twice." "Well, it bears repeating. You are. All 3 of those children are lucky to have you. I am the lucky one. I got to marry you, got to be father to these incredible kids." He pulled her closer. "Though I have to admit, I am glad we are done having babies for a while. 3 under 3 nearly killed us both." Abigail laughed. "Agreed. I love our children, but I would like to sleep through a full night again someday." As if on cue, A cry came from inside the house. "Samuel, right on schedule." Vincent stood and held out his hand to Abigail. "Come on. I will walk the floor with him if you will bring me coffee. I have a feeling it is going to be a long night." "When is it not a long night?" But she was smiling as she said it. And when they went inside together to tend to their crying son, Vincent thought there was nowhere else in the world he would rather be. The years continued to roll by. William did indeed learn the truth about his birth father when he was 8, in a carefully planned conversation that involved both Vincent and Abigail. He had questions, some of them difficult to answer, but in the end, he hugged Vincent fiercely and said, "You are my real papa. You are the one who has always been there." Lily grew into a spirited, independent girl who could outride most of the ranch hands by the time she was 10. Samuel was quieter, more thoughtful, with a gift for working with the horses that surpassed even his father's. 2 more children joined the family. Rose in 1888 and Thomas in 1890, the latter named in a gesture of forgiveness and closure toward Abigail's first husband, who had died of pneumonia in Sacramento years earlier. The house that Vincent had built with dreams of a family was now filled to bursting with noise and love. The ranch continued to thrive, becoming one of the most successful horse ranches in Nevada. Abigail's dress business grew as well, and she began teaching sewing classes to other women in town. Carlin itself changed over the years. The silver boom ended, but the town survived, transitioning to ranching and agriculture. Some families left, seeking opportunities elsewhere, but the Oaks family stayed, putting down roots that went deep. On a warm evening in August of 1893, exactly 10 years after that fateful day in the general store, Vincent and Abigail returned to Patterson's general store. It was now run by Mr. Patterson's son, the original owner having retired. They walked in hand, their 5 children trailing behind them, and stood in the spot where William had been born. "Hard to believe it has been a decade," Abigail said softly. Vincent looked around the store, remembering that day in vivid detail. The panic, the fear, the overwhelming sense that he was in over his head, and then the incredible, indescribable joy when William took his first breath. "We should tell them the story," he said. The children gathered around, even 2-year-old Thomas sensing something important was happening. Vincent and Abigail took turns recounting the tale, how William had come into the world on this very counter, how Vincent had talked Abigail through the scariest moments of her life, how they had fallen in love while trying to pretend they should not. William listened with wide eyes, hearing details he had never known before. Lily demanded to know if it had hurt. Samuel wanted to know if Vincent had been scared. Little Rose asked if the store had any candy. "The point," Vincent said, gathering them all close, "is that sometimes the most important moments in our lives happen when we least expect them. That day, I came to this store to look at saddles. I left having helped bring a new life into the world and having met the woman I would marry. Nothing was planned, nothing was expected, but it was exactly what was supposed to happen. Because we were meant to be a family," William said, his 10-year-old wisdom showing. "Exactly. We were always meant to be a family." They left the store with bags of penny candy for the children and walked back through Carlin as the sun began to set. People waved as they passed, friendly and accepting in a way that would have seemed impossible a decade earlier. The Oaks family had become an integral part of the community, proof that love could conquer scandal and that families could be built in unexpected ways. That night, after all 5 children were finally asleep, Vincent and Abigail returned to their favorite spot on the porch. Abigail had strands of silver in her hair now, and Vincent's beard was more gray than black. They were no longer the young, desperate people they had been a decade ago. They had been tested by life, by hardship, by the daily challenges of raising a large family and running a ranch. But they had come through it all together, their love deeper and stronger than ever. "You remember what you said to me that day?" Abigail asked. "In the store when I was so scared." "I said a lot of things that day. You told me I was brave, that I just had to get through the moment and everything would be all right." She took his hand. "You were right about everything. We were both brave. We are still being brave, choosing this life, choosing each other every day. It is not always easy. No, but it is always worth it." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars and listening to the sounds of their ranch settling for the night. 5 children slept safely in their beds. The horses were quiet in the barn. Mrs. Chen's cottage showed a light in the window. Everything Vincent had ever wanted was right here, had been right here all along, waiting for that August day when a woman went into labor in the general store and he chose to help instead of running away. "Vincent?" Abigail's voice was soft in the darkness. "Yes." "If you could go back and change anything, would you?" He did not even have to think about it. Not a single thing. Every moment, every challenge, every hard decision, it all led to this, led to us. And I would live through every bit of it again if it meant ending up right here. She leaned her head on his shoulder, and he held her close, both of them grateful for the wild, unexpected, absolutely perfect life they had built together. The life that had started on a general store counter in Carlin, Nevada, with a cowboy who refused to walk away and a woman who learned to be brave enough to choose love. The years that followed were good ones. The children grew and thrived, each finding their own path. William took over much of the ranch operation as he grew older, showing a natural talent for both horsemanship and business. Lily, true to her independent spirit, eventually left Nevada to attend college in California, one of the first women from Carlin to do so. She returned with a degree and a husband, a professor of literature who fit into the family surprisingly well. Samuel stayed close to home, breeding horses that became famous throughout the West for their speed and intelligence. Rose discovered a talent for painting, capturing the Nevada landscape in ways that made people see its beauty anew. Young Thomas, growing up in the shadow of his older siblings, carved out his own place as the family's peacemaker and philosopher, always ready with wise words beyond his years. Vincent and Abigail watched their children grow with pride and amazement. There were hard times too, of course. A drought in 1895 that nearly broke them. The death of Mrs. Chen in 1898, which left a hole in all their hearts. The various heartbreaks and setbacks that came with raising 5 strong-willed children. But through it all, Vincent and Abigail remained partners, lovers, best friends. They still made time for each other, still sat on the porch in the evenings talking about everything and nothing. They still laughed together, still held each other through the hard times, still chose each other every single day. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Vincent took Abigail back to the spot where he had proposed, on the porch of her old house in town. The house was abandoned now, the Oakes family having long since moved permanently to the ranch, but the porch was still there, a bit more weathered but standing strong. 20 years, Abigail marveled. It has gone so fast. The best years of my life, Vincent said. Every single one of them. Even the year all 3 kids had chicken pox at the same time. Even that year. Well, maybe not my favorite year, but still part of the best life I could have imagined. She smiled, the same smile that had captured his heart all those years ago. What would you tell that young cowboy who walked into the general store that day? If you could go back and talk to him? Vincent thought about it. I would tell him to trust his instincts, to not be afraid of the hard things because the hard things bring the greatest rewards. I would tell him that love is worth fighting for, worth waiting for, worth every sacrifice you have to make. He pulled her close. And I would tell him that clearing that counter and helping that woman is going to be the best decision he ever makes. Even though you had no idea what you were doing, especially because I had no idea what I was doing. Sometimes you just have to jump in and trust that you will figure it out. They stood there for a long moment, holding each other on that old porch where their life together had truly begun. 20 years of marriage, but nearly 21 years since that day in the store. 21 years of building a life, a family, a legacy. Ready to go home? Vincent asked finally. Always, Abigail replied. As long as home is wherever you are. They rode back to the ranch as the sun set over the Nevada hills, painting everything in shades of gold and purple. Smoke rose from the chimney of the ranch house, where William and his wife were preparing dinner for the family. Grandchildren, 3 so far, would be running through the halls, their laughter echoing off the walls that Vincent had built with his own hands. This was the happy ending they had fought for, the life they had built from that moment of crisis and connection in the general store. It was not perfect. It was not always easy. But it was real and it was theirs, and that made it absolutely perfect. Vincent helped Abigail down from her horse, and they walked hand in hand toward their home, toward their family, toward the future they would continue building together. The cowboy who had once been alone, waiting for something he could not name, had found everything he needed and more. And the woman who had been so afraid, bringing her child into the world on a general store counter, had found the courage to choose her own happiness. Together, they had built something beautiful. Together, they would face whatever came next. Together, they were home.